Hello there, and welcome to Gooner U, where there are no degrees because the learning never stops. I'm Dove, a TA here at Gooner U, and my friend Keith is our stalwart distinguished professor of Arsenal and football studies. Enter our classroom as we discuss the week's news involving Arsenal, Premier League, Champions League, some cup competitions, and international football, all from the perspective of a couple of Americans. This week, we kicked off our Carabao Cup campaign at Port Vale, and then traveled to St. James's Park to face off against Newcastle United. Hello, Keith.
Hello, Dove. We're only going to touch briefly on it, but obviously the most important news of the weekend is that New York is still blue.
Congratulations on your Hudson River Derby victory this weekend.
It was good. It was real good.
Yeah.
We don't have to talk about it too much, but it was fun.
I'm
it's always
pretty
fun
sure
to beat those guys.
I only saw it from behind, but NYCFC had some orange trim either now or in the past, right, on the jerseys? Because I'm pretty sure one of the coaches from a team that was on the field before my son's game today was wearing an NYCFC jersey. So.
Yeah, they had an orange kit from a couple of years ago with like this big purple lightning bolt sort of design on it, like the David Bowie kit, as people started calling it. It was pretty spectacular.
Yeah. I only saw it from behind, and there was no player name to hang my hat on, but I'm pretty sure by the colors alone, it was probably NYCFC.
Could be, yeah. If they had the orange trim, because of course, obviously, they share the sky blue color with Manchester City, but the orange trim is definitely New York.
Yeah. Moving into news, I fear that we have some news involving another injury to manage.
Yeah, so that's Noni Maduake, which this came out, I think, on Monday. He is going to, we talked about him coming off the field last time and seeming a little early, and I mean, you defended him, which was fair. I wouldn't say he was bad necessarily, but apparently that was partly injury related, as seen as he was limping, having come off. It sounds like at least as the earlier reports are, about 2 months, which is better than it could have been. You see a player walking around with knee injury, you start to think things like ACL and out for the season, but apparently it's 2 months, which is not ideal, but also survivable, I think, with the roster we have. And where I think also finally what our schedule is going to look like over the next couple of weeks as opposed to what we've had to deal with for this first month and a half of the season.
Right. Hopefully he's going out, but some other players should be coming back soon. We already had a couple that we saw again this week who we hadn't seen consistently over the last few weeks. So hopefully that continues.
Yeah, we'll be integrating some of those guys back into the side, which is always nice to see.
Yeah. So after we finished off Port Vale this week, the fourth round draw happened, right? Who are we going to be playing against?
Right, we're skipping that part of the story. We'll talk about Port Vale, don't worry. But spoiler alert, we won, and Arsenal's into the fourth round of the League Cup, where they're going to be home against Brighton, which is it's a little trickier than I'd like. Brighton is generally a very good side, or at least certainly a very dangerous one, but also at home is a team we should feel we can beat, and. Yeah, we feel we should beat them. Also, I didn't actually write down. Old pals Grimsby Town, the vanquishers of Manchester United, are also in the fourth round. They advanced. Wow. I think they drew Bournemouth or something. They drew another Premier League side. So
good for them.
Round. Yeah.
All right. Meanwhile, in the only spot above us on the table as we speak, Liverpool seems to have dropped points, huh?
I told you. This was going to happen at some point, and they were beaten finally on Saturday at Crystal Palace. Of course, they scored in the 87th minute to tie the game. I only turned it on somewhere in the second half because I saw it was 1-0, and it's like, I kind of see how this is going. Of course, Liverpool leveled. Some commentary. Now, granted, these are Arsenal people, so take their opinions of Liverpool with a slight grain of salt. But they were saying like. Palace could have easily been 3 or 4 up at that point in the game, which would have been decidedly less dramatic. But Liverpool scored to tie the game because, of course, they did. And then in stoppage time, Crystal Palace got a goal, and it's our old pal Eddie Nketiah. Got the stoppage time winner for Palace, who, by the way, hasn't lost in something like 12 games going back to last season. they're kind of quietly, or I guess not so quietly anymore, in third. They're right behind us. They've been playing. They're the only unbeaten team remaining in the league at this point. So they have not been. They've been quite good this year, and so don't. But Liverpool was always going to drop points. They were always going to lose a game, a couple games like that, and ignoring for a moment that's what happens to just about everybody except the Invincibles. That's generally what happens, and also, we've sort of talked about this with Liverpool. They can score a lot of goals, but their defense is very beatable. It's very beatable. So, that, and we'll talk about the Newcastle game in a moment, but you think about it, that was on Saturday. So coming into the game here on Sunday, it does put a bit of pressure on us to get a result against Newcastle, because the opportunity is there. Liverpool's dropped points. Now we can really make a move and start to put pressure on them, which, as we'll see.
Every time we were in that position last season, we didn't really. I think there's like one time we closed the gap on them a little bit toward the end of the season, but we didn't capitalize most of the time. It's good to see it work out this season so far.
Yeah, so far. Again, also, it's the end of September. Like, there's still 30 plus games to go. Like
32, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody's giving out trophies, right? Nobody gets to win a trophy at the end of September. So let's just. We got a long season to go, and we're grinding our way through what has been a very difficult stretch. And Liverpool's about to hit a very difficult stretch. They've got a bunch of games coming up with City, United. I think they have Newcastle. So they have Real Madrid in the Champions League. So they've got a bunch of tricky games coming up as well. So we'll see if they can come through sort of the way we have.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I'm pretty happy with how we've done. We've faced a lot of our most difficult competition so far already this early in the season. And overall, we came away with most of the points we would have wanted out of that. So,
yeah, I mean, away to Old Trafford, I know United's frankly worse than I expected. They lost again this weekend. But away to Old Trafford has always been tough for us. Away to Newcastle, away to Anfield. Those are some very difficult away fixtures for us, and we came away with 6 out of 9 points in those three, plus plus already playing City once. So I feel pretty good. We'll talk about that more towards the end, but I feel pretty good so far.
Glancing down table a bit, congratulations to Wolves for getting a point and joining everyone else on the table on the board.
Wolves gave up a stoppage time goal to Spurs. That was a draw. They had that game all but won and gave up a late goal. I saw somewhere there were like 9 stoppage time goals in the Premier League this weekend.
Interesting.
Something crazy like that. Now, a couple of them were like City put on 2 goals in stoppage time to turn a 3-1 route into a 5-1 route. So, it's not exactly. But a bunch of them were the kind of dramatic late goals. Nketiah's winner, Gabby's winner today. Like, there's a lot of them. It was a day of drama, or a weekend of drama in the Premier League.
Yeah. All right, well, let's start talking about our match against Port Vale. The first thing that I noticed was kind of interesting. We faced this team, so they are League One, recently promoted from League Two, but no shirt sponsor, a kind of very plain, not even a crest, like kind of a logo type. It said like PVFC is like just kind of an initialism there. Very so plain, in fact, that when they showed it on the graphics on the Paramount Plus broadcast, it just kind of disappeared, like it was keyed out or something, and it was basically not there at all against us. But their park still just has a name, like St. James's Park, right? It's just Vale Park, no sponsor name attached to it. That was kind of nice. We don't see that so much in the Premier League. So
it's one of the fun things about the League Cup and competitions like this, when you get these away games to lower divisions, and you can really sort of see, it is one of the great things about football in England in particular, is just how deep down the pyramid it goes, where you get teams with real following and a club with a real history and a real centerpiece of the community. And it's not an unfair criticism that Arsenal and some of those other big teams too, Liverpool, can be like this, that you sort of lose that neighborhood-ness just because of the size of the club. And we're sitting here, 2 people in the United States talking about this team in North London. So there's a little bit of arguing against yourself there, but it is interesting sometimes to see that you just to go down that far in the table. I think if we think about the league as having a giant, the football leagues as having a giant table from the top 4 divisions, there's like 60 spots between us and Port Vale. But but in some ways there are still very much in the same competition. And I will say though, on terms of the shirt, as much as I enjoyed the shirt without the sponsor in general, I didn't particularly care for the fact that the initials they had were in gold, because you couldn't see that. They were almost impossible to see. Yeah. But also that, so as I think it was Handbrake Offer, they said this. Apparently, this is a kit connected to. It's a retro throwback kit. It is. The club says they were founded in 1876, and so we are coming up on 2026 is the 150th anniversary of the club. So I believe then this is at least the season will obviously run into 2026. So I'm guessing this is connected to their 150th celebration. So it's a retro kit in that regard, as opposed to not having a shirt sponsor, because with the amount of money they don't pull in from a small stadium like that, they need the shirt sponsor. They need the money. Sure. So I'm sure they have one.
I did notice that wasn't their only logo. I mean, I saw on all the staff, they have a regular crest. I'd seen it even, they showed some elderly gentleman who I guess was their manager for a long time. He was watching in the stands. His jacket had the crest. Like I could tell they had a crest, so that made it even more interesting. Yeah. So. Right.
Yeah, I think this was more just a special throwback, as we'd say in America.
Right.
It did look nice, though. I agree with you. It did look nice. Minus the can't read the lettering on the shirt, but okay.
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned like not having necessarily a community sense around Arsenal so much. I think that was part of what I enjoyed the most reading Fever Pitch, and to a lesser extent seeing the movie, but especially reading the book, is I feel more of a connection to that history now than I used to, having done that. For anyone who didn't see or listen, that was a summer project we did. We discussed in a Gooner Film Studies episode the book by Nick Hornby, and then the film adaptation, and then a little bit the remake of it for the American market about baseball, but mostly the Arsenal focused part of it. But so if you want to go back and find that, that's something you might enjoy. But anyway, so getting back to Port Vale, the first thing that I noticed was, hey, Ben White is back. So that was cool. But then I decided to list the starting lineup, which is something I don't always note down at the beginning of a match, because typically it's the people who you expect. But in these cup matches, it is interesting to see who's on the field. And especially with the depth of our bench this time, it's a particularly interesting topic. So I kind of broke it down into who I consider like the first team players, then kind of the second string or B team players that we had on accompanying them. I want to get your take, see how you feel about these. Did I place them correctly to you? Like, so for the first team, I would list Saliba, White, Marino, Eze, Saka, and Martinelli. Those are all clearly players who at least typically have been starters. Martinelli, maybe a little less in our current configuration. But I would still stand by it. I'm actually wearing my Martinelli jersey from a few years ago now. Then on the B team, I would put Ritha Balaga, Mascara, Myles, Lewis-Skelly, Norgard, and Waneri as kind of the players we don't see as much these days. Do you take issue with any of those? Does that sound about right to you?
I guess it depends how we define the first team. Because, there's a couple of those I would look. I mean, of that, if we're thinking of first team as the guys who you got to win one game, who is the best 11, like the best 11, the regulars like that, right? Of that, I would say Saliba's on that list, Eze's on that list, Saka's on that list.
Right.
I think the others are, in the case of Marino and to a certain extent Martinelli, I think they're more context dependent. I think we see Marino more this season in part because we're covering for certain things like the Odegaard injury. I think there are some games he makes more sense as a midfielder, so depending on the opponent, maybe. I think in the case of Martinelli, I think we're going to see a lot of rotation out on that left wing. I certainly don't think Martinelli is certainly no nailed-on starter. And as far as Ben White goes, listen, I love Ben White. You love Ben White. We all love Ben White. Jurriën Timber is the starting right back.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, if we're thinking of, who, not people who have started for us in the past, because we could have thrown Lewis-Skelly on there, except we come into the season, obviously, Calafiore is the left back. I think if we're looking at that, I think Saliba, Eze, Saka are the guys who are on the field. And even Eze, I think he's more often than not, but I can see a few circumstances where maybe he's not. Whereas Saliba and Saka are very clearly two of the first name. If everybody's healthy, they're two of the first names you put out there. They're, obviously.
Sure. No,
we should have mentioned that, by the way, in news. Saliba signed a contract extension this week, so we've got another 5 years of him here at the club. So,
good.
he's definitely nailed on starter.
Yeah, definitely. And no, that's great, because I know there was some concern around that. I think he may have wanted to go to, was it a Spanish club or a French club that he was associated with or something?
Oh, it was always Real Madrid, because that's just who's... No, it's not so much that it's because his contract was coming up soon.
Right.
Obviously, a club like Real Madrid was going to be very interested, and we've sort of talked about this, right? He's not that Saliba's looking to get out or anything, not that he doesn't love Arsenal. He clearly does. He just signed a big contract with them. But I think it's also a case of, Saka's come up through the academy, and so to leave Arsenal would be it could be a very difficult decision for him, whereas for Saliba, who is not from England, not from London, didn't grow up wanting to be an Arsenal player, has played other places, for him, that maybe the call of staying doesn't have the same resonance. Now, obviously, that's, again, totally out of the picture because he signed the contract, so he's staying around for a while longer. But a nice bit of news that was before, I think it was Friday that got announced. So after the cup game, you'll notice how studiously people notice how we've avoided talking much about this game. Let's be honest, there really isn't a lot to talk about in this game, is there?
No, it was a pretty straightforward match. I mean, when you put one of the best teams in the world against a 3-league, third from the top down opponent, it kind of went the way that you would expect it to. No real surprises there. But so we did see a couple players for the first time, Aretha Balaga and Christian Norgard. What is Aretha Balaga's first name? I don't remember yet. Kepa, okay. So how do you think they did, seeing them for the first time?
Fine. So this is a hard game to judge because so much of it was a fairly dominant performance. I mean, it's 15 minutes in, but at one point Arsenal was at 80+% possession.
Right. Yeah, I have that in the 16th minute. It was 81.8% possession at that point.
Yeah, I don't. It's really a hard thing to sort of judge because, frankly, we just are a lot better than they are, and that's. Overall, I thought we played fine, although we sort of talked about it with the United game at the start of the year, and even I think it was one of the others, maybe it was Forest, that sense that we weren't necessarily playing at full speed. And then we were definitely kind of taken halfway, which given the circumstances, away game, lower division team, knockout stage of the cup, this is not the time to go crazy. This is not the time to make a show of this. You get in, you get your points, and you get out. This is you want this to dangle around any longer than it has to. So I guess I look at this and say Aretha Balaga and Norgard were fine, and the most important thing they did was soak up a bunch of minutes so that the guys who we want playing against Newcastle can play and not worry about getting hurt.
Yeah, makes sense. Was it just me, or did we get a little bit sloppy and careless toward the middle of the match?
I don't think towards the middle. I thought maybe the middle of the second half. It did seem like it was a stretch. We had a few bad giveaways. I think one sequence ended with them putting a shot just over the bar. There were a couple stretches of sloppiness there. I guess. It's very much a coach's observation, right? Because most people are going to look at this and go, "Oh, hey, we won 2-0, awesome!" And it was a pretty low key, low event game. So read in one post game article of all the games of football, this was definitely one of them. Wasn't a particularly eventful or exciting game, which is what you want, especially on the road. But also, there were a few stretches where we weren't sloppy. I guess what I'd say as a positive of that, two positives. One is the coaching angle, which is, of course, now we have things to work on, which is what, again, the coach's dream, right? You win the game, but there are things to work on. the other side of that too would be, think about how we've talked about or looked at some of these games, Carabao Cup, or even some stages of the Europa League, where we were obviously rotating players, and how you could see the drop off from the first team to whatever it was we were putting out there. But I think it says something that, yeah, we saw some of that same sloppiness again, but it was so noteworthy in the context of the game where by and large, nothing happened. Nothing particularly interesting. Again, goals change games. We scored early in that kind of, it took the pressure off us from having to press forward and be more aggressive. You could kind of take the air out of the ball a little bit, or, definitely have some possession and work the ball around more.
Right. No, that's definitely true. Let's talk about the couple goals for a minute. Sometimes we forget to kind of go over and appreciate the goals that were scored when we're talking about some other things in each match. I mean, this first one to me, as a great shot, he did what he needed to do, but really the thing that caught my attention was the little like fake out that Myles Lewis-Skelly did in getting the ball to Eze. Oh, that was nice.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was on purpose. I'm sure that's what the story they're going to tell everybody. It might have been, could convince me it wasn't, but hey, whatever. Yeah. It gets through. It's a good ball from Martinelli. Good. And Eze picks it up and slots it home without much of an issue. I mean, that's first goal as an Arsenal player, as a senior Arsenal player. We talked about his journey to the club and all that. So kind of a special moment for him. But yeah, just a nice little set of play, and it's 1-0. And I mean, the game wasn't over, but that's kind of where we wanted to be at that point.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, it was never. It wasn't a foregone conclusion that we were going to shut them out, but given the strength of our defense, it seemed fairly unlikely, especially we did have Saliba in there, and Mascara has proven himself plenty capable. So, I wasn't too worried after that point, and I was thankful that came so early in the 8th minute. So, the second goal was, again, we kind of had the situation of a player coming on off the bench and making an impact right away. Trossard again. We've seen this with Trossard and Martinelli recently, Marino in the Newcastle match. We've seen this a lot. He comes in and, oh man, that shot, it was one of those ones where, again, it just like found exactly the path it needed to through the players to get into the net. It was really remarkable.
Trossard again. Ole, ole. Yeah, he I mean, it's a little bit of the old Route 1 football, right? Just straight up the middle, Saliba long pass, Trossard beats the defender, gets it around the keeper. Just a nice finish. Nothing, it is a good finish. He is a finisher. It's one of the things I think he brings to the team that a lot of guys don't have as well. You put him on, you get him in these positions, and he can put some shots in that really do, that he's able to finish those opportunities. And it come not too long after their probably their best chance, a couple of other opportunities. So it was nice at that moment. Because, of course, 1-0, it's good to have the lead. Yes, we dominated. They really didn't have very much in the way of chances. But to have... Yeah, but of course, all it takes is one mistake, and all of a sudden you're behind the 8 ball. And so for him to come through there, put in the goal, that pretty much that finished it off for us.
Yeah, a note and a question. One thing that was kind of funny in watching the Newcastle match today, I watched with my son for the whole match, which was nice. He doesn't often stick around for the entire thing, but he did. It was fun after he had a great performance earlier today. That was a fun thing to do together. We actually even practiced during the halftime of our viewing of the match replay. We just kind of practiced some skills out in the yard. So it was a very soccer focused day for him today. But it was funny. He pointed out after, I forget when it was, Trossard was walking around the pitch. He was between a couple of Newcastle players, and he said, "Oh, he's really short." And I said, "Well, I'm sure he's not that short. I mean, Arsenal has a bunch of tall players. They mentioned specifically some of the Newcastle players were really tall. I looked it up after the match. He's actually 5'8". He actually is a kind of short guy. So.
Oh yeah, he's small and slender. Yeah, he isn't a big guy. And obviously, it stands out a little more with some of his teammates, and of course, as we said, Newcastle. But yeah, he's not a particularly large guy. But soccer is one of those where size. You can do a lot without a large size. So Leo Messi is not a very big guy, but
I've been to Madame Tussauds. I have seen a pretty close approximation of Leo Messi in person. Yeah, not a tall guy either. And actually, for him, it's actually an asset. I mean, his body is kind of long, and his legs are a little bit shorter, and like his play style is benefited by that being so close to the ground. He's able to maneuver pretty effectively that way. But I was curious. It didn't really ever have cause to come up during the broadcast, but I don't remember, what is the tiebreaker with these Carabao Cup matches. Would it have been like the 30 minutes of extra time and 2 15-minute halves, or would it have gone straight to penalties? Do you know?
I believe they were saying at some point in the match that it would have gone straight to penalties. I don't know. I feel like this is one of those competitions where every year the rules are different. That's probably not actually true in practice, but that feels like it might be. We should have gone back. I don't know. Let's ask United. They might know. I don't apologize for that. But yeah, I think they had said it would have gone straight to penalties. Which makes sense. I like the cups. I like that they exist. I have no problem with it. When I say I don't want Arsenal to travel for the cups, it's just because it's an extra hassle and it's an away game. I'd rather play at home. But at the same time, like, travel is part of it. If you draw an away game, you go play it. That's just how it is. But I do think in terms of the additional matches they keep adding, all the games players play, the minutes, all of that, I think, I don't think we need an extra 30 minutes to decide this. And I don't have a real problem with that. And frankly, if you're, from Arsenal's perspective, if you're going into a shootout with Port Vale, you deserve whatever happens, whichever way the coin flips. Same with United. Like, that's kind of what happened. They put themselves in that position and they got bit. And I think Arteta made some comment in the post game, like, you never want to be the team that everyone's talking about after, or something like that. Like, it could happen to any of you, so you just want to make sure it's not you.
Right. Are you ready to talk about Newcastle?
I was going to make a joke about having more to say about the Port Vale game, but no, I don't. I don't. Let's move on to Newcastle.
All right, so this match happened today as we record, and we did end up edging them out 2-1 after it seemed for a long stretch during the match that this was going to be a frustrating 1-0 defeat. But the first thing that we wanted to talk about is I'm going to give you the floor for a brief referee rant. Do you want me to set the 5-minute clock like we've done in the past this season?
Oh God, no!
Can you contain it to 5 minutes?
I don't think I'll need 5 minutes. I'll say this: I hate going there because it seems as if Newcastle is simply allowed to play a different sport than the rest of us do. The shirt pulls and the tackles and the degree to which it's just not even called. And when it is called and should turn into cards, how it takes them forever to do that. The first card of the game came out in 56 minutes and went to Calafiori, which was okay. That was fair. Dan Burn picks up 8 fouls. 8! What on earth are we doing here? It's so many, and so many of them are cheap shots. Some of them are dangerous. I was, frankly, kind of surprised that we didn't really hear anything for Bruno Guimaraes. It's a nice change of pace for him, not elbowing people in the head, which is something he's done. It's just so frustrating when you go up there. And of course, as you listen to it on the commentators, right, that they talk about how Arsenal needs to battle through it. Like you have to battle through people, pulling your face off. I saw that in Gyökeres. They showed the replay where the defender is, pulling him down in midfield. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And it's not one referee. It's all of them. Like, how does this keep happening with this team in this place? It's just, it's a tough crowd and they get after the referees, but it's just ridiculous that they get away with it. It's ugly. It's sloppy. And I'm really glad that we kept our cool. We fought fire with fire. We certainly had a few, clattering challenges of our own. But if that's how the game's going to be played, well, that's how the game's going to be played. But it's just so frustrating to watch it devolve that way.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go full on embarrassing the way I talked about with Manchester City, but just to remind you that Newcastle is owned by a sovereign wealth fund and therefore has virtually unlimited piles of money on which to spend, and that's the team they put together.
Yeah,
I think that speaks for itself.
So, do you notice this more at St. James's Park than you might see in the reverse fixture at the Emirates?
Oh yeah, and to be fair, I think the big difference between this game and some of the ones we've seen in the past, this fixture, the away to Newcastle fixture, the big thing is we've had those games too, where tactically they are also a problem for us, and we've played very poorly. And I think that was the case both in our league, in the loss in the League Cup semifinals there, but also in the league. I think we've struggled up there in the past, partly for tactical reasons. I mean, that's frustrating and annoying, all the physical stuff, but we also haven't been able to get out of our own way. I thought today was very different. I thought we dominated them for most of the game. I thought we were flat out better than they were. And frankly, a 1-0 defeat would have felt unjust, not just because of how much I am annoyed by the refereeing. I think it would have been inaccurate based on the flow of the game. And some of that was Pope, who made a couple of really good saves throughout the game. But we were just flat out better than them most of the game. I defy you to watch that game and actually suggest that Newcastle was a better team, minus the fact that they got a set piece goal, which, oh, look, someone scored a set piece goal and no one's complaining. Okay. But we don't need to go into that part of it. But just, yeah, it's frustrating we go there. But I think overall we played really, really well. Everyone's going to talk about the mentality that we have. And they're right, too. We kept our cool. We forced our way through. We battled through and got the win. But I think also we were just really good all day.
Yeah,
arguably our best game of the best performance of the season.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't argue with that. It's funny you talk about us giving it back to them a little bit. I was thinking of what's the name of the player who scored their goal?
Oh, is it Voltamade?
Voltamade. All I can remember now, ever since the commentator said this, I can't remember his real name. All I remember is that he said, I guess he's a recent acquisition for Newcastle.
Yes, and he's their Alexander Isak replacement. They got him.
Okay.
They got him from Germany. That was a Frankfurt. That was like a TK. I don't remember where they got him from, but yeah,
so he was saying that the fans have taken to calling him Voldemort, which I guess is one of the closest names to it.
That makes sense.
But anyway, so there was the controversy of like we were going for a header at one point, or no, it was that header that he scored, and like he had Gabriel was complaining that he pushed him over as he was scoring that header, which it looked pretty light. It looked to me after the fact like Gabriel went down a little easy on that one, but then they showed later around the midfield mark, Gabriel totally just like shoved.
Yeah,
kind of messing with him.
They were talking a lot for minutes after, like the referee was calling them over and like telling them to cut it out.
I think it was after that retaliation that the ref called a conference with the two of them just kind of settled.
I mean, it was frustrating when it happened, but I don't know. I think as I watched that, if you look at Gabriel, he's not like he's standing straight. He's kind of like weirdly crouched over when the contact happens. So I think he goes down easy because he's a little off balance.
Sure.
Like, I don't think he's like diving or looking for a call. I think he just gets knocked over. It was frustrating because it had come not long after we didn't get a penalty on the other end. But frankly, had they called, that would have been wrong to call that back. Gabriel's got to be stronger there. I can't. If that had been the other direction, if we had a goal taken away because of that contact in the box, we would have rightly been irate about that.
Definitely.
So it's frustrating because it was so much against the flow of the game. And arguably isn't even a corner that needed to happen. It comes because Mosquera kind of, I don't know if he panicked or didn't know where he was and kind of fires the ball out back as opposed to maybe turning it up the field, the sidelines. I don't think that's why he was substituted at halftime. I think it's just he wanted Saliba because he's Saliba. But it was for the quality performances he's had since Saliba first got hurt a couple weeks ago, it was a bit of a disappointing moment for Mosquera. And again, the fine margins of the league, right? You make that mistake, you give them an opportunity, and you're down 1-0.
Yeah. So let's get back to that penalty non-call you alluded to a little while ago. So this one was Gyökeres breaks free of the pack, gets into, I think it was only the 18-yard box. I don't think he'd made it all the way into a 6-yard box. And Nick Pope went after him, like we were talking about in our short a couple of weeks ago. He went to him, made the shadow bigger, right? And kind of swallowed Gyökeres with the shadow a little bit. He knocked into him, took him out, and the ref on the field pointed to the spot, called it a penalty in the moment, and then we saw VAR reverse it, which in the past always said it's a really high bar to overturn. It needs to be a clear and obvious error. What was the ostensible clear and obvious error that he made on the field? Like, I just don't get why that was reversed.
Yeah, so I'm gonna sort of rely on you a little bit here because, of course, I'm watching in a crowded public space, so I can't really hear the things that are said. What I was told was said, and you can confirm this to me if you can, that they said because Pope makes contact with the ball, therefore it's not a foul. Was there something to that effect?
I did hear the commentators talking about that, but also I don't know that I entirely agree with that assessment. It looks like it was Gyökeres's foot that actually poked the ball away, not Pope's, as far as I could tell.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, again, we're trying to discern the rationale, but the fact is, so many things about that play are poorly done. It's a penalty. He plays the ball. That's not that. I can't even think of words right now. That's not exculpatory. That doesn't take you off the hook. We saw Saliba get a red last year, right? Remember that clash of heads in the box? We saw him get that after having actually played the ball. And go back and watch the tape. I agreed with that. Or at least I understood it. I didn't like it, but I could understand it and see where it came from. That is a penalty. He obstructs the player. You could argue that's a red card. He's the last defender. That's denial of a goal scoring it's dogso. It's denial of an obvious goal scoring opportunity. Pope probably should have been out of the game. And instead, from the sound of it, VAR is calling them down and apparently talking the referee into changing his call, which is exactly not how that's supposed to be done.
Right.
VAR is not here to re-officiate calls on the field. It's there to overturn clear and obvious errors. You cannot watch that and tell me that's a clear and obvious error. And wait for it. Watch this. No, it gets worse. So remember, this play goes in. The ball, Gyökeres gets tripped up. The ball goes out. By the way, Saka actually picks up the ball in the box, and then the referee blows the whistle and stops the play, and points to the spot for the penalty. Okay. Well, it turns out there was no foul. That's the call. So why is it a drop ball given to the keeper? Saka has the ball in the box. Why is all of a sudden Newcastle just lining up for a goal kick? It was a complete mess. It's embarrassing, and it's just. It's so, and of course, it's one of those. Of course, it happened in St. James's Park. Of course, that's how it went. It's just you have these systems, you have these rules, and then they wonder why people don't like the way the system operates. Well, because that's not how it's supposed to operate. It's just it's so ridiculous. It should have been a penalty. Maybe we don't score. Pope was really good today. I mean, that could easily, I could easily see him making a save, but it's the fact that wasn't called is just. I wasn't shocked the longer he was standing. The longer he stands there at the screen, you're kind of waiting for them to make the call. But it was just.
But also, by the same token, though, if the bar is supposed to be clear and obvious, the longer it goes on, the harder it is to make the case that it's clear and obvious.
Well, yeah. I mean, I have always, and this goes back to when the NFL, the American Football League. First instituted replay. There needs to be a timer.
Yeah.
Like if you can't figure out in 30 seconds, 60 seconds watching the replay that the call was wrong, then the call stands.
That's a good thought.
It's okay. It is replay should not be there to simply measure everything to the micrometer and make sure that the call is absolutely 100% right. It's there to overturn the clear and obvious error. And the fact that they continue to try to use in this ways, that's why people don't trust it. Because now you get these goofy explanations. I'll point back to the Liverpool game the day before. That on their tying goal, the ball floated into the box, and Mo Salah's hand is in the air. Did it touch it? Didn't it touch it? I don't know. It's really close. I'm not sure. And it turns out they said no, it didn't, and it the ball falls to Chiesa and he finishes off and gets the goal. But it's like, okay, I mean, it's fine. Check it. That's totally normal. That's what it's there for. And but then how they watched that for a good while, and where they were trying to see, and they didn't see it. So okay, fine, you make the call. I don't. The fact he makes contact with the ball is not exculpatory. Gilchrist is pushing the ball around him. That's a foul and arguably a red card for Dogso. And it's just so annoying that we have to sit and go through this again.
Yeah. Well, we didn't have to wait until our next match to have another instance of VAR interfering in a penalty call or non-call situation. So later in the match, this was... I don't have it in front of me right now, but it was later on. Yeah, it was fairly late in the match. Oh, yeah, it was 87th minute. Couldn't find it. There we go. 87th minute, we have Gabriel is defending in the box and goes down... no contact, but it was a potential handball, where as he's going down, his arm was stuck up in the air and the ball does touch it. And they reviewed this one for a long time. If I remember correctly, the on-field official did not rule it a handball. I think he waved it off and said, keep playing. But then VAR decided that if they wanted to get involved, they ended up calling this one not a handball. So, a penalty non-call in our favor this time, at least. But I just want to kind of understand, again, the rationale for it. So there were a couple things being tossed around that they said affected it. So for one thing, they kept on talking about proximity to the ball. And I guess was the thought there that when you're like that close to the player and the ball, that he wouldn't have had time to move his hand out of the way or something? Is that what they were talking about there?
That sounds like an older reading of the rule where it was about judging intent.
Yeah.
Like, I'll say this. I think in Europe, that's a penalty.
Okay.
And we've talked about how the game is refereed a little differently, how things are interpreted a little differently in the Champions League versus when we're in the Premier League. I think in Europe, that might be a penalty.
Interesting.
I think what happened there was it looked to me like... It goes to the question of intent. I think the ball is deflected into his arm, which is why that call was why eventually. So it's not the old phrase was it was hand to ball, not ball to hand. Well, in this case, it was ball to hand. But I think the idea it wasn't that the player took the shot and Gabby's arm is out there and gets it. I think because it deflects into his arm, that is not considered a handball. I think is where that rationale was. I haven't really seen a fuller breakdown of that one.
Well, I think what they ended up saying, the reason they said that, and keep in mind, the commentators are hearing in real time, like the comms between the different members of the officiating team. So they're hearing what they're saying. What they had said is the ultimate reason is it bounced off of Gabriel's foot into his hand. So like you said, a deflection, but like off of his own body in this case. But that's interesting to hear you say that wouldn't have been a foul, or that would have been a call in Europe, because my understanding from us talking about this before was that Europe has the idea of ball to hand being a non-call, while we don't in the Premier League. Did I get that backwards? I don't
remember the details. I say it was in Europe. I was more of a case of we know those kinds of things are refereed differently, and I admit I don't remember.
Okay,
I could have overspoken on that one. That's fair.
Okay.
but it is one of those where I think in the case the deflection is what pulls Gabriel out of that.
Right.
Also, I just am, as we just, given what we've just spoken about, I have zero sympathy for Newcastle on that one. And it would have been particularly galling given that came right after we scored the goal to finally tie it. That would have been particularly frustrating.
Right. I don't know if I mentioned it, but yeah, that was also in the box. So would have been a penalty had that been called. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's why it was reviewed. That's why they were looking for the review. Yeah. If it was a handball out in the field and the referee misses it, then play on. But because it's in the box, that's why the VAR got involved.
Yeah, it makes sense. So we had another instance in this match of a player coming in off the bench and scoring a goal before very long. This time it was Marino. This definitely seems like it's becoming kind of a signature of Arsenal under Arteta. That's how we've won the last, 3-4 matches with goals from late subs. It's a positive thing that, we're making that work for us.
Yeah, and Arteta's talked about this too, that we should probably think about them less as substitutes, and he calls them closers, right? If we think that some players start the game, some players close the game. And I think I think in this case, what we saw today were closers, as opposed to, you could argue with the City game that some of the changes we made, obviously, one of them was Maduake off at halftime, which was clearly injury related. But I think some of those changes we saw there were, the phrase you're hearing in some of the Arsenal commentary is that, an admission of guilt from Arteta that he got the formation wrong. I think the goal plays a little bit more into that. It's a formation that would have been okay, except for the fact that Erling Haaland scored early on, and now we're chasing a team that decided that was going to sit in the box. Mm-hmm. I think in this case, we're changing things up in part to. I look at that sub. Seeing the notes that it was a 70th minute. Saka came off. I don't think he's a 90-minute player just yet, especially in what was definitely a very physical game.
Yeah.
And then we saw Calafiori come off. At that point, Calafiori's on a yellow, and he's been. We love him for it, but he is a bit of a reckless player, and a second yellow is, always a distinct possibility. So I think Marino coming on there, I think was partly to get Calafiori off to protect him, but also I think you saw where he went. It was a tactical shift. Marino suddenly, Calafiori doesn't really have a position. He starts at left back and then just kind of pops up all over the field. Marino was definitely more forward and centrally located, essentially trying to be a big body in the box, which is what ultimately he got in position for the goal.
Yeah, definitely. And, set piece FC. I mean, both of these, like the Gabriel one was directly from the corner. And then even Marino, it wasn't our typical pattern of sending the ball in the air over the box and heading it in. But it was one or two passes away from the short corner on that one that he scored. So
yeah, it created off an opportunity to a set piece. And it just delightful the way it just sort of fell in, and you could see, Pope was just rooted to it, almost shocked to see that it went in.
I don't fault him for it, and especially we've seen how good he is today. But he might have done better on that one. It did look like it caught him by surprise, and he didn't react in time.
He wants that one back. He absolutely wants that one back. That should not have gone in. But we can say, we had quite a few shots that probably should have gone in and didn't. So again, don't care. I think I mean it's funny in that regard, especially getting the whole result in at the end.
Right.
But to get the header in like that.
Yeah. It was interesting. I noticed when Myles Lewis-Skelly came on, he came on for Trossard, which is definitely not like for like, right? They kind of play in different areas. How did he slot into the formation when he came on the pitch?
Well, actually, if you saw it, remember, he's essentially playing in Trossard's position out there on the left wing. Now, by that point in the game, remember, by the time he comes on, it's late. It's already tied. So we're pushing forward for the result. And obviously we have seen Lewis-Skelly as a left back. He's not actually a left back by trade. He's a midfielder. Right. And so having him in the midfield swinging passes in and making driving runs into the box, which is essentially replicating what Trossard was doing, isn't entirely foreign to him, ignoring, of course, as well that as the left back, our left backs have always sort of since Zinchenko, right? They've inverted. They moved in and moved into the midfield and forward. But yeah, he was definitely playing further outside and was part of tossing the ball in. And I think part of that too is he's 18, so he's younger and a little smaller. And with the way the game was going, I mean, we talk about how big Arsenal is. Newcastle's bigger than us. They're a much more physically imposing team. And so we really needed. That's not a game for Lewis-Skelly to be finding space in the box. That's why we need a Marino there. Right. I mean, Gyökeres is not really a big box guy, but he can definitely, he's a big guy who can hold his own. Declan Rice making some runs into the box. Eventually we got to, obviously Gabby getting up there. Even Gabriel Martinelli's not afraid to sort of throw himself around a little bit. He's a little smaller, but he's not afraid to throw himself around. And frankly, neither is Trossard, who, I thought had a nice game overall.
Yeah. All right. Who is your player of the week?
So this was tough in thinking about the context of the week because the two games are so very different from each other.
Worlds apart.
Yeah, in so many ways. But I did think across the two games, because we saw just about everybody in most of the games. Across the two games, I'm going to go with Eze. it's hard to pick a player of the game for Port Vale because we just kind of passed around them for much of the game, ran through them for much of it. But as they got the early goal, I think he really it definitely didn't put the game to bed early on, but definitely got the early goal. I think helped us settle in after a dominant spell and just kind of made sure that we were on the front foot the rest of the night. And then as far as how he played against Newcastle, I thought he was all over the place. He was creating offensive chances. He probably should have had 2 goals, but if not for a couple saves from Pope.
Right.
Was it him or was it Trossard who cracked one off the post?
That was Trossard, I think. Yeah.
I mean, I thought he was all over the place. Again, I thought the team was very good. I thought a lot of guys were really good. But for player of the week across the 2 games, I'm going to say Eze. Welcome to the Arsenal.
Yeah, that's a good shout. He was definitely on my mind for the Port Vale match. But like you said, it was kind of tough for the Port Vale match. And given that, and then also the relative weight I would give Newcastle this week compared to Port Vale, it was a much bigger match on our schedule and it mattered more to me. So I'm going to weight more heavily the clear person who I picked for Newcastle and give him the week. Which, he did fine against Port Vale. He didn't particularly distinguish himself to me, but as I'm thinking about more, he may not have even.
I don't believe he played. I know. I don't believe he played in Port Vale. So I guess that is his distinguishing feature. I know who you're going to pick. So
right. So yeah. So even absent that, I still think Jurrien Timber was Arsenal's player of the week with only playing 1 match. He was great. Like I don't remember really noticing a player during the Port Vale match as much as he drew my attention at the Newcastle match. Just completely outfoxing the player who he was marking at every turn at Newcastle, and just contributing to the play up the field too. Just like really helping a lot, getting the ball into the box to help score. Just really did a great job.
I agree. He was a monster today. I thought everybody was good. I really don't have a lot of complaints about our players today. I mean, I guess you could fault Mosquera for the knocking the ball out for the corner that Newcastle scored on. You could fault Gabriel too for again not defending that corner particularly well. Of course, I think Gabby more than made up for it. And I don't think Mosquera was subbed up for that. I think he was subbed off because Arteta wanted Saliba on, and Saliba was going to play defense. Declan Rice was fantastic at the base of the midfield. I thought Odegaard did a lot in his what was he on the field for 10, 15 minutes?
Something like that. Yeah.
Sacco I thought was dangerous all game. Trossard was all over the place. I have so many good things to say about the way the team played today. I do think I don't remember. Did we say this in our pre-show or did we say this on the air? I think this was our most complete performance of the season so far.
Yeah. No, I agree. It all clicked. Just kind of calling an audible on here as a little dessert topic. There's something related to the tangent that we got off on talking about VAR pertinent to the Newcastle match so much. They announced this week that Major League Baseball is going to be imposing the automated ball strike challenge system starting with the 2026 season. What are your thoughts on that as it pertains to VAR and the Premier League and stuff like that?
I think the umpires have gotten worse since they've started tracking the balls and strikes. I think this is good. And I think they're doing it right with a challenge. With a basic challenge system, and it's a quick one too, right?
Right, 15 seconds or something. They said,
it's not the manager. It's no one else. It's the catcher or the pitcher, the catcher or the batter. Those are it. Right. All they have to do is tap their head. They put it up. Apparently, they've been using it in the minor. They've been testing it in the minor leagues this season, and it's smooth. It works quickly. The player makes the challenge, and they look at the screen, and they put it up on the board, and they say, the call was right or the call was wrong. They change it, and we move on. It's. I think that's long overdue. I don't think I don't think we're fully ready for all robot umps, but I do think this will help deal with some of the more egregious decisions, which feel like they're getting worse. It could just be an impression, but it does feel like some of that stuff has been getting worse over the last few years. So I don't know, but I'm glad that's coming, and I think it's being done in a good way as opposed to just simply like hauling the umpires out altogether.
Right. And yeah, I did get to see it a little bit. They used it for the All-Star game, so that was my first time seeing it in action. But yeah, the speed of it, the fact that it is a challenge-based system, and if you get it wrong, that you lose it, like that's all good. It'll keep it honest, and I'm looking forward to seeing that next season.
The interesting thing to see would be because I've heard this in the context of like the Yankees talking, like who among the players is going to actually have carte blanche to make challenges. Like you think a guy like Aaron Judge, who's, a 2-time MVP, could win a third this year, one of the best players in the game. If he thinks it's a ball or a strike, if he thinks the call was wrong, he probably has the ability just whenever he wants make that challenge. There's a lot of other guys in the lineup, and I've seen guys who kind of complain about some calls. I don't want you. Let's be judicious with you. Maybe you don't get to just do this whenever you want. It'll be kind of interesting to see how teams approach that and how they think about it for their players too.
I was looking at the stats, and they've looked at across the minor league usage of it, who is the most accurate between catchers, batters, and pitchers. And basically batters and pitchers are below 50%, catchers are over 50%. So the catchers have the best sense of whether it was actually a wrong call. So
I think it's because of the nature of their job, what they're doing. I also think that I think the batter and the pitcher, it's a little more personal if the call is wrong. I mean, not that the catcher doesn't care. Obviously, he wants to get the strike calls, but I feel like the catcher knows when he's been framing, right? When he's moving his glove around to earn a call.
Sure.
The pitcher generally thinks he's always executing the pitch well. The batter always thinks the ball's out of the strike zone. Like that part is actually not shocking to me in the slightest.
That's true. All right, so next week, our first match is going to be against Greek side Olympiakos in the Champions League. What should we expect from this match?
We should expect a game that could be a little ugly. The Greek sides are generally solid defensively. They have a lot of experience in the Champions League, especially Olympiakos. The Greek league has, really is one of those, the title kind of passes around the same three teams. Olympiakos, Panathinaikos, and there might be a third one in Greece. But yeah, so what you get is a lot of teams like we've seen with PSV from the Netherlands or some of the Portuguese sides like Porto and Sporting, is you get clubs that even though their talent level is less than where Arsenal is, their experience level is quite high. So they generally know how to play and handle these games relative to some other, especially if a side like Arsenal may be betting in a bunch of young players. We've also played them a lot recently in Europe. I think they said Olympiakos is one of, if not our most common opponent in our history in in the Champions League / European Cup / other tournaments. In fact, we played them. They knocked us out of the Europa League in 2020. Which allegedly it was their owner, Evangelos Marinakis, because remember Olympiakos is in that ownership group that includes Nottingham Forest.
Right.
Marinakis was in the tunnel before the game greeting the Arsenal players. After the game, we discovered that he had been diagnosed with COVID. Mikel Arteta is shortly thereafter diagnosed with COVID, and then the league shuts down for several months. So hopefully it doesn't happen like that.
Yeah, we don't want a cataclysmic outing against Olympiakos. That would not be great.
No, that's... Yeah, I'm about to say that was also came on the heels of us losing to them and not getting knocked out of the Europa League. So yeah, Cataclysmic was pretty. I mean, they're getting knocked out of European competition, and then they're spreading a global pandemic.
Right.
But we've seen them a lot. So it's not unfamiliar to us. So that's
cool.
Which I think we should feel confident going into that, but don't be surprised if it's a little mucky of a game in some cases.
Okay. And then in the league next weekend, we face West Ham. What's going on with them so far this season?
They stink. That's what's going on with them. They're not very good. They're down at the bottom of the table. Then they've done it. They pull the plug on their manager, Graham Potter, which isn't a surprise. It seems like he never really fit there. He's had a really rough go of it. He did a lot of good things at Brighton. And since he's left, he went to Chelsea, and I feel like he's been a few other places, and it hasn't gone well, which makes me think it was Brighton that was really good, and perhaps not Graham Potter. But he was relieved of his duties yesterday and has been replaced by Nuno Espirito Santo, most recently of Nottingham Forest. The coaching carousel has begun, and so Nuno's in. But it's okay, Graham Potter, because what this means is you'll probably be managing United by Thanksgiving. So
that was the name that I was thinking when you started that sentence. Yeah, because they are probably going to be looking. They just brought in a new manager, right? They fired Ruben Amorim, I think, right?
No, they haven't yet.
Okay.
They might be soon.
I guess that's what I was thinking. Is they should have buy.
I'm just kidding. United's not going to do that. They're going to go for a splash hour. They're probably going to go. Honestly, they'll probably look at Oliver Glasner, who's the manager at Crystal Palace. Don't be shocked. I would be mildly surprised if he finishes the season at Palace. I'll just say that.
Yeah. All right, so where and when can we find those matches?
So the Olympiakos, the Champions League, will be on Wednesday. They'll be on Paramount Plus. I did think it was interesting. I looked at the TV lineup for the week, and one of the games is always on CBS Sports, so on television. Not Arsenal Olympiakos, that was not going to be it. But it's also not Barcelona PSG, which is a tasty game, and that one's. It's like I think Dortmund's involved. It's like not a bad game, but like really not that one's okay. But yeah, Wednesday Champions League Paramount Plus against Olympiakos, and then on Saturday against West Ham. That is a home game for us. And it will be, the earliest note appears to be that will be on Peacock. So streaming only.
All right. Thanks for joining us at Gooner U. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can also listen to the podcast version of our show on Apple, Spotify, and some other places. If you're only listening, try watching us on YouTube with the link in the show notes. Your homework for today is to comment on one of our videos on the platform you prefer: YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, or Twitter. Love it or hate it, let us know. Or you can just say hi. We record the show using Zencastr. If you'd like to try it out, you can support Gooner U by signing up using the link in the description, which also has links to everything we talked about and our socials. Again, my name is Dove, and you can find me on Twitter at Dove Frankel. With me, as always, is Keith, and you can find him in a pub watching Arsenal matches.
Our wall at the back, it's Gabriel. Ole, ole.